Chapter 1:11. The Omen of Destruction. Solian sat in deep thought within the silent temple, holding the eternal hourglass in his hands. Its faint glow was accompanied by the soft reversal of the sands inside, producing eerie whispers like an ominous warning. Through the flickering light of the hourglass, a vision of a dark storm engulfing the land emerged. Malgrath. He isn't finished, Solian murmured. This omen signals his ultimate resurgence. He immediately summoned the gods to the central temple. On their way, strange occurrences spread. The sky turned blood red without warning. Icy winds carried ghostly whispers, and the ground cracked as though it sought to swallow everything whole. In Auren's palace, the eternal torch's flame began to dim, its light seemingly drained by an invisible force. Auren stood before it, his face etched with concern. We sealed him. So why does the darkness still spread? He questioned aloud. Meanwhile, in Ignis's volcanic domain, lava flows halted abruptly as fissures spread across the mountain's surface. Suspicion burned in Ignis's fiery gaze. Flying over a field of flowers, Zephyra felt a shift in the wind.
Darkness, it's approaching, she whispered, her eyes piercing the horizon with unease.
At the central temple, the gods gathered in a tense atmosphere as Solian began to speak.
I've seen the omen within the hourglass, he declared, his voice resonant.
Now, Malgrath is rising, stronger than ever. If we don't act now, all will be lost.
I refuse to believe he can escape the seal, Ignis countered, his fiery eyes flashing. We sacrificed too much to imprison him.
But the signs are undeniable, Zephyra interjected, her wings quivering lightly.
The winds carry the scent of darkness. We cannot ignore it.
With resolute determination, Auren proposed a bold plan.
We must harness the power of all the ancient relic fragments we've gathered.
Only then can we seal him permanently. Zephyra, the swiftest among them, volunteered to scout Malgrath's stronghold. Before departing, she looked at her comrades, her eyes gleaming with resolve. I will return with the answers we need.
She soared over dense, shadowy forests, venturing deep into the heart of darkness. The shadow fortress loomed ahead, shrouded in thick black mist. Inside, haunting whispers echoed, testing her willpower at every turn. Golden trap of desire, Malgrath's voice hissed, echoing from every corner. Do you think you're strong enough to overcome greed? Feeling the pull of temptation, Zephyra steeled her mind and pushed forward, resisting the allure as she delved deeper into the fortress.
Back at the temple, Solara addressed her companions with a calm but commanding tone. Combining all the relic fragments is a double-edged sword. Their power can seal Malgrath, but failure could destroy us. We have no other choice, Auren replied, his eyes alight with resolve. Even if it costs us everything, I will not let darkness prevail. Solara held his gaze for a moment before nodding. If that is your decision, then I will stand by you to the end. Zephyra returned with critical information. One of the final relic fragments lay within Malgrath's fortress, protected by an intricate magical barrier. If we can't break through the barrier, we'll never complete the seal, she said, her breath heavy. Nyxara stepped forward. I can break the barrier using my power over darkness, but I'll need all of you to protect me while I work.
Then we act now, Auren declared firmly.
Darkness cannot be given more time. The gods set out toward Malgrath's fortress, the air growing heavier and darker with each step. Auren led the way, the eternal torch blazing brightly in his hand, carving a path through the oppressive mist. Zephyra flew ahead to scout, while Ignis and Thalios guarded the rear. Solara channeled her natural powers to form a protective barrier around the group, while Nyxara prepared to dismantle the magical seal upon their arrival. At the gates of the fortress, a fierce battle erupted against Malgrath's shadowy minions. Each god unleashed their full strength to shield one another, creating a breathtaking spectacle of light and shadow clashing in the gloom. Chapter 1:12. The Trap Within the Shadow Castle. Zephyra glided gracefully through the dense black mist surrounding Malgrath's castle. The air was thick with sinister whispers, and icy winds whistled through the cracks in the stone walls. The castle loomed like a massive fortress of shadows, with sharp spires piercing the sky and eerie lights spilling from its small windows. I must find the final fragment quickly, she thought, clutching her feathered charm, the source of her power. The castle's main gate was tightly shut, but it posed no challenge to Zephyra. With a sharp gust of wind, she sliced through the barriers and slipped inside like a shadow.
The moment Zephyra entered, the castle's interior transformed. A grand chamber, glittering with treasure, appeared before her. Gold, jewels, and radiant ornaments filled the space. Bed. A soft, alluring voice echoed. "Zephyra, wouldn't you like freedom forever? Take whatever you desire. It's all yours." Malgrath emerged, his sly grin spreading across his face. "You've fought long enough. Freedom, power, and wealth await you. Forget your mission." Zephyra felt an inexplicable pull toward the treasure, but in that moment, she recalled her promise to her comrades. Mission. Never let darkness cloud her purpose. Closing her eyes, she summoned a powerful gale, shattering the illusion. "You can't manipulate me, Malgrath," she shouted. Malgrath laughed darkly, unfazed. "We'll see, Zephyra." Escape won't come so easily.
Outside the castle, the gods faced a massive magical barrier encasing the structure. The barrier not only blocked entry but also reflected their attacks. Nyxara closed her eyes, extending her hands to manipulate the darkness within herself. "I'll merge with the barrier to find its weakness, but you must protect me," she said firmly. Alondra stood behind her, the light torch in her hands shining brightly. "I won't let anything harm you." As Nyxara began decoding the barrier, tendrils of shadow lashed out from the castle, attacking relentlessly. Alondra wielded the torch to repel them, while Ignis and Thalios combined their powers to form a firewall and a water shield to guard the perimeter. "We're running out of time," Nyxara said, sweat beading on her forehead. Inside the castle, Malgrath wasn't solely focused on Zephyra. He stood before a dark altar, where fragments of ancient relics were arranged in a spiral. A stream of dark energy emanated from the center, saturating the air with malevolence. "Witness the end of your foolish gods," Malgrath sneered, running his hand over the relics. "I'll wield this power to obliterate the entire realm of light." His laughter echoed menacingly throughout the castle. When the final barrier was breached, Auren led the gods into the castle. The eternal torch in his hand blazed brightly, cutting through the suffocating darkness. Shadows struck back with ferocity, but Auren's every step pushed them further. "We must find Zephyra and stop Malgrath's plan," he commanded. Ignis, wielding his flaming sword, cleared the path with fiery blasts, while Solara summoned vines to entangle the shadow creatures. Inside, Zephyra felt the presence of her comrades, and moved swiftly to reunite with them. At last, Zephyra located the final fragment resting on a stone pedestal, protected by a thin barrier. She summoned a sharp wind to shatter the shield and retrieve the fragment. But before leaving, her eyes caught sight of ancient inscriptions carved into the pedestal. "The ultimate weapon shall emerge when light and darkness unite." Zephyra committed the words to memory and hurried back to her comrades. Handing the final fragment to Auren, she shared the crucial information about the ultimate weapon. "We need to find where this weapon is hidden," Alondra said, her eyes filled with determination. "And we must prepare for the final battle," Auren added, gripping the torch tightly. With the final fragment and a vital clue in hand, the gods set out toward the ancient lands where the ultimate weapon was said to be hidden. But the darkness was far from defeated. Realizing his plans had been disrupted, Malgrath summoned his most powerful demons to ambush the gods. The gods now faced not only perilous trials, but also the weighty decision of whether the union of light and darkness could truly bring peace, whether it was another trap lying in wait. Chapter 113. The Ultimate Weapon. Solian sat in a dimly lit room, illuminated only by the faint glow of the eternal hourglass. He silently observed the grains of sand flowing in reverse, forming strange images in the flickering light. On the final fragment, ancient symbols began to glow, creating patterns only those with mastery over time could comprehend. "This is an ancient message," Solian said, his eyes narrowing in concentration. "The place where light and darkness intersect, where balance creates absolute power." Auren, standing nearby with the eternal torch in hand, interjected. "Are you certain we can find it in time? If Malgrath discovers it first," Solian interrupted, his voice calm but commanding. "We have no choice. The ultimate weapon is our only hope to seal him away forever." The deities quickly set off for the ancient lands. The path ahead was not only long and treacherous, but also laden with traps left behind by the darkness. Along the way, they encountered cursed regions. The Forest of Shadows. Towering ancient trees emitted a mist that caused hallucinations to anyone who entered. Zephyra had to use her wind powers to dispel the fog, but with each attempt, she felt the darkness creeping into her mind. The canyon, of reflections, a strange land where everything was mirrored on the glimmering ground. With each step, the group saw distorted versions of themselves, twisted by darkness. Unable to bear the pressure, Ignis burned everything in his path to clear the way. The River of Death. A pitch-black river, devoid of life. Thalios, wielding his trident, summoned water from the seas to purify the river, allowing the group to continue their journey.
Reaching a deadly chasm with swirling winds that blocked their path, the deities faced an insurmountable obstacle. Solara, sensing the power of nature around her, knelt and began chanting. "There is a creature here that has slumbered for millennia. It will aid us," she said, her voice resonating like the whispers of the forest. From the earth, massive vines emerged, forming the shape of a mythical eagle with wings spanning hundreds of meters. The eagle screeched, bowing its head toward Solara. "Carry us across," she commanded, gently running her hand through its feathers. The mythical creature ferried the deities across the chasm, its massive wings shielding them from the raging winds. Once they reached safety, the creature bowed one last time to Solara before vanishing into the air, leaving behind a sense of tranquility.
As the group neared the ancient lands, the darkness thickened ominously. From the shadows, Umbra emerged, his cold eyes gleaming like bottomless voids. "Did you think you could lay your hands on the ultimate weapon?" he sneered, his voice chilling. Caelus, the demon of black fire, descended from above, causing a massive explosion that shook the ground. The deities were immediately surrounded by darkness and black flames. Ignis versus Caelus. Ignis charged at Caelus with his flaming sword. The clash of red-hot flames against dark infernos created a ferocious battle. Despite being overpowered by Caelus's strength, Ignis pushed forward, forcing his opponent onto the defensive.
Nyxara versus Umbra.
Nyxara confronted Umbra directly, wielding her control over darkness. She not only fought against his power, but also struggled to maintain her own control, resisting the corruption of the darkness within her.
Zephyra's tactical support.
High above, Zephyra unleashed massive tornadoes to balance the battlefield. She attacked, while providing crucial support to her teammates, disrupting the enemy's formations. After a fierce battle, the deities managed to drive Umbra and Caelus back, though at great cost to their own strength.
Deep within the ancient lands, the group entered a massive temple. At the central altar, the ultimate bow awaited, a creation of intertwined light and darkness. Its radiant beauty was mesmerizing, yet it exuded an aura of danger. "This is it," Auren said, his voice low. Solian stepped forward, his hands trembling as he touched the bow. "But to activate it, a price must be paid. Its power is not granted without sacrifice." The group fell silent, each of them understanding the gravity of the cost.
As Solian began to activate the bow, a brilliant light erupted, spreading throughout the space. A deep, resonant voice emanated from the weapon. "Those who awaken me will lose everything but will save all. Are you willing?" Solian looked at his comrades, his eyes filled with determination. "Time has given me the chance to fight. Now, I return it." Before anyone could stop him, Solian grasped the bow and began its activation. Light and darkness merged, creating an unimaginable force.
Solian smiled, then dissolved into the flow of time.
With the ultimate bow activated, it glowed radiantly, though none could wield it yet. Vorin, the demon of betrayal, appeared, sowing seeds of doubt among the deities, shaking their trust in one another. "Are you sure your allies won't betray you?" he asked with a sly grin. The group had to overcome the trial of trust and unity to harness the bow's power for the final battle against Malgrath. Chapter 114. Faith and Sacrifice.
When the supreme bow was activated, it emitted a radiant glow, blending light and darkness. At that moment, a deep, commanding voice echoed from the void. "Only with absolute faith among you can this bow be wielded. Without it, it will destroy you instead." The group fell silent, their gazes shifting uneasily as they felt the presence of another force. Vorin, the demon of betrayal, materialized in the space, a sly grin on his lips. "Look at yourselves," he sneered. "You believe faith is your strength, but in truth it's nothing more than a fragile lie." His voice cut through their minds like a dagger, stirring doubt within their hearts.
Vorin began his psychological game, pacing slowly, his sharp gaze falling on each of the gods.
"Let's start with Zephyra," he said mockingly.
"Do you really believe Auren wouldn't abandon you to save this world? And Solara, do you truly think you're irreplaceable? Each of you harbors reasons to betray, even if you won't admit it."
The gods wavered, doubt creeping in. Ignis, with his fiery temper, clenched his flaming sword tightly. He's trying to divide us. Don't let him succeed.
But Zephyra's eyes glimmered with uncertainty, and even Solara remained silent, her hands trembling as they gripped the vines around her.
The tension snapped as Zephyra turned to Ignis, her gaze icy. You say not to let him divide us, but you've always believed your strength to be superior. You've never treated us as equals. Ignis, enraged, shot back. You just soar above it all, blind to the battles we fight against the darkness beneath your feet. Without me, you'd have failed long ago. The two clashed, fire and wind colliding in violent whirlwinds and explosions. The rest of the gods had to intervene to prevent further escalation. Auren stepped forward, raising the eternal torch high, its brilliant light separating them. Enough! Auren shouted. This is not the time for mistrust. If we lose faith in each other, everything will fall apart.
As the infighting subsided, Vorin laughed, his voice echoing mockingly. You cannot defeat me. Doubt has already consumed you. Nyxara stepped forward, her violet eyes blazing with determination. He is the source of this division. I will seal him. Raising her hands, she summoned the darkness within her, weaving it into a barrier to imprison Vorin. But the cost was immense. Her divine power began to drain, and her body trembled under the strain of containing his strength.
Nyxara, you don't have to do this alone,
Solara cried out, but Nyxara shook her head. This is the only way, she said softly but resolutely. At last Vorin was sealed within an orb of darkness. Nyxara collapsed, her once great power now reduced to a mere flicker. With Vorin sealed, Auren stood before the group, his eyes filled with resolve. You heard the voice from the bow. We can only wield its power if our faith is restored. He met each of their gazes, his voice steady and firm. I know we've suffered great losses, but I believe in us. We are not just fighting for this world but for each other. Auren's words began to mend the rifts. Ignis and Zephyra exchanged nods, their anger fading. Solara, though weary, offered a small, affirming smile. As trust was rekindled among the gods, the supreme bow began to glow brilliantly, its light and darkness intertwining in perfect harmony. It thrummed with energy, as if acknowledging the group's unity. From within a gentle glow, Solian's voice echoed faintly. You have done well. This is the moment the bow has been waiting for. Auren stepped forward and grasped the bow. A surge of power coursed through him, a fusion of light and darkness igniting within his soul. The gods stood around him, channeling their strength into the bow. Now, we are ready, Auren said, his voice unwavering. The group advanced toward Malgrath's fortress, where darkness enveloped every corner. The supreme bow blazed brightly, its light challenging the shadows. This ends here, Auren declared, stepping boldly forward. Malgrath, you will never escape the light. Quote, Chapter 115. The Final Battle. Malgrath's fortress rose like a colossal shadow in the middle of a desolate wasteland. Its towering black spires clawed at the sky, and the thick, oppressive air made every breath heavier for the gods. The darkness here is overwhelming. We must stand strong, Auren said, his voice steady like a guiding torch. The supreme bow in Auren's hands glowed brilliantly, and with each step forward, its light pierced through the suffocating darkness. As the gods reached the heart of the fortress, the ground trembled violently. From hidden corners, Malgrath summoned his most powerful shadow army. Giant creatures with spiked bodies and glowing red eyes surged forward, intent on devouring everything. You will never reach me, Malgrath's booming voice echoed across the space. Darkness is eternal. The shadow army advanced like a relentless tide. The gods immediately formed a defensive line, with the light from the supreme bow serving as their only shield, slowing the encroaching shadows. Standing at the center of the battlefield, Alondra summoned her most powerful light magic. The staff of light in her hands radiated a golden glow, creating a protective circle around the gods. Focus, everyone! I'll hold them back, she shouted, her determined gaze unwavering. The light from Alondra's staff burned the shadow creatures on contact, disintegrating them instantly. But Malgrath's army seemed endless, with wave after wave of darkness surging toward them. When an unexpected attack came from behind, Solara reacted swiftly. She summoned the power of nature from the earth, and massive vines rose up to entangle and tear apart the shadow creatures. No one harms my comrades, she cried, her voice echoing through the space. The vines not only shielded the gods, but also created a barrier, giving Elandra time to recover her strength. The gods finally reached the main hall of the fortress, where Malgrath awaited them. He stood atop a throne of shadows, his enormous form radiating a dense, dark energy. Auren, Malgrath said coldly. Do you think your light can destroy me? I am the essence of darkness itself.
Auren stepped forward, the supreme bow in hand.
Darkness is not eternal. Light will always find a way to erase it. The battle between Auren and Malgrath commenced. Malgrath unleashed massive shadowy tendrils, but Auren fired arrows of pure light that pierced through them. Each clash of light and darkness shook the entire fortress, sending shockwaves and explosions throughout the battlefield. As the battle reached its climax, Malgrath conjured a massive orb of darkness, preparing to obliterate the gods in a single strike. Ignis, his eyes filled with unwavering resolve, stepped forward and unleashed the full force of his fiery power to block the attack. Do not let my sacrifice be in vain, he said, his voice calm but resolute.
Ignis charged into the dark orb, his body igniting in a brilliant blaze.
The resulting explosion heavily wounded Malgrath, but consumed Ignis in a final burst of light. Grieving the loss of his comrade, Auren raised the supreme bow one last time. This is the light of all who have sacrificed themselves to protect this world, he declared, his voice filled with authority and sorrow. A massive arrow of light shot forth, piercing through Malgrath's body. He let out a scream of agony as the darkness within him dissolved, his essence being pulled into the void by the power of the bow. As Malgrath's body crumbled, the gods combined their powers to seal him away for good. Elandra, wielding her staff of light, and Solara, channeling the power of nature, created a sealing circle. Nyxara used the remnants of her dark energy to ensure that Malgrath could never escape.
You will never break free from the light, Auren said firmly as the seal was completed.
As Malgrath's fortress collapsed, the first rays of dawn pierced through the dense darkness. The gods stood amidst the ruins, a profound sense of relief washing over them. We have won, but the cost was too great, Zephyra said, her voice trembling as she remembered Ignis's sacrifice. No, Elandra replied, her eyes shining with determination. Ignis lives on in the light he created. We must continue to protect this world, for that is his wish. The new dawn was not just the beginning of a new day, but a symbol of hope and rebirth, marking the end of the battle with Malgrath. Chapter 116. A New Light.
After Malgrath's fortress crumbled, the dense darkness blanketing the land began to dissipate, leaving behind ruins and desolation. Cracked earth, scorched trees, and dried rivers stood as grim reminders of the darkness's devastation.
Elandra,
clad in her radiant cloak of light, stepped into the center of the land. She raised her hand to the heavens, summoning celestial light that cascaded down upon the barren earth. Under her power, charred forests began to regrow, green leaves sprouting anew, and the cracked ground healed itself.
This world has endured enough suffering, Elandra said, her voice gentle yet resolute. Now is the time for renewal. The other deities joined in the restoration. Zephyring. Solara summoned nature to cover barren lands. Thalios channeled water from the seas to refill the rivers, and Zephyra used her winds to clear the dust, bringing fresh air to the devastated landscape. A week after their victory, the deities held a ceremony at the site of the final battle. An eternal flame was lit to commemorate Ignis, the god who had sacrificed himself to destroy the darkness. Nyxara stood before the flame, her hands trembling as she held a tattered piece of Ignis's old cloak.
He used his final light to protect us.
We must ensure his sacrifice is never forgotten. Elandra placed a comforting hand on Nyxara's shoulder and said, He has not disappeared. Ignis is now part of the light we see every day.
Auren, his deep voice steady and warm, led the ceremony with a solemn vow. We, the chosen protectors, will safeguard this world so no one else must endure such sacrifice again. Prayers were whispered as Zephyra soared above, scattering white petals across the battlefield as a final farewell to Ignis.
At the central temple, the deities deliberated on the fate of the ancient relics, the sources of power used to seal Malgrath. Holding the eternal hourglass, Solian spoke with caution.
These relics hold uncontrollable power. In the wrong hands we could face another Malgrath, Corinth, or something worse.
Nyxara nodded in agreement,
using her dark powers to create a protective barrier within the temple, ensuring that no one could access the relics without the consent of the Divine Council.
Elandra added,
It is our duty to ensure future generations do not suffer as we have. These relics must remain hidden and protected.
As the deities convened to discuss the world's future, Zephyra, with her innate strength and free spirit, stood and spoke. This battle taught us one thing: no one can prevail alone. Unity is our greatest strength. Solara nodded in agreement. I concur. A divine council should act as a bridge between the gods and humanity, ensuring balance is maintained. Thus, the council was formed, with deities representing each element: light, darkness, nature, water, and wind. They pledged to preserve peace and work together to resolve conflicts in the future. After the council's formation, Alondra surprised everyone by announcing her intention to leave. I have fulfilled my duty. Now, I wish to live a peaceful life where light can spread naturally. Auren approached her, his eyes filled with understanding. You have sacrificed so much, Alondra. Your decision is wise. But your light will always remain with us. Zephyra embraced Alondra tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. You will always be our hero. As the world began to heal, the deities continued their work, rebuilding cities, teaching humanity to live in harmony with nature, and guiding them away from the lure of darkness. A new era began, marked by a balance between light and darkness. On the highest mountain peak, the deities gathered one last time before returning to their individual roles. Auren held the eternal torch, gazing down at the restored world below. His voice echoed with determination. A new age of peace has begun. Let us protect it. As the sun rose, its first rays bathed the world in light, free from the shadow of darkness. In the distance, Alondra stood, smiling, before disappearing into the forest. There, she began a new life, serene and free. Chapter 117. The Aftermath of Sacrifice. After Malgrath was sealed, the world sank into a fragile peace. However, remnants of darkness lingered everywhere. Once lush forests were reduced to charred stumps. Rivers had dried up, and villages lay in ruins. Auren and the gods stood amidst the devastation, their gazes heavy with thought. We won the battle, but not the war. This world needs healing, Auren said solemnly. Zephyra, flying overhead, surveyed the ravaged lands. Humankind cannot do this alone. They need us. Solara knelt and placed her hand on the parched earth, feeling the pain nature had endured. Let's start here. Let's restore what has been lost. The gods summoned representatives from human kingdoms who had fought alongside them against Malgrath. A grand meeting was held at the central temple, where the eternal torch cast its radiant glow. You fought bravely, Auren began, his voice resonant. But to rebuild this world, we must work together. King Kedrick, a human representative, stood and spoke with determination in his eyes. This world has no room for division anymore. We are ready to learn to live in harmony with nature. Solara led the efforts, teaching humanity how to replant forests, protect water sources, and live in closer harmony with the natural world. Zephyra served as a messenger, flying between regions to spread the message of peace. As the world began to heal, Auren sensed an unsettling instability in Malgrath's seal. Each time he held the eternal torch, a strange vibration coursed through his hand, as though the darkness still stirred. Solien, with the eternal hourglass in hand, shared his concern. The seal is not fully stable. If it's not reinforced, it may break. Auren frowned, his expression filled with worry. We must find a way to ensure that the darkness never returns. As Zephyra worked to bridge the gap between the gods and humans, she encountered persistent tensions. Some of the gods, especially those who had been influenced by darkness, distrusted humanity. Nyxara, once aligned with the darkness, stepped forward to defend humankind. They fought beside us. They deserve a chance. Kaelios, another god, opposed her. Humans are weak. Sooner or later they'll destroy everything we've worked to rebuild. Again. The conflict escalated, forcing Zephyra to use all her diplomacy to maintain peace. If we don't stand united, all our efforts will be in vain, she said, her voice firm and resolute. On a quiet night at the central temple, Solien pored over ancient scrolls and uncovered a new prophecy. It foretold the rise of an entity even stronger than Malgrath, capable of destroying both light and darkness. This being can only be stopped if we find the primordial stone, Solien explained, his tone grave. The prophecy revealed that the primordial stone, a legendary artifact, had the power to permanently stabilize the seal. However, it was hidden in a place called the Infinite Gorge, from which no one had ever returned. Auren convened the gods to decide their next course of action. He proposed splitting into 2 teams. One team, led by him, would remain to guard Malgrath's seal and ensure its protection. The other team, led by Nyxara, would embark on the perilous journey to the Infinite Gorge to retrieve the primordial stone. Nyxara stepped forward, her wings rustling softly. I will lead. If this stone can save the world, we cannot delay. Despite her weakened power from the previous battle, Nyxara volunteered. I'll go with you. We can't afford to let anyone fail. Before their departure, Auren handed the eternal torch to Nyxara. Carry our light with you. Bring it back with hope. The gods parted ways at the gates of the central temple. Nyxara, Nyxara, and a select group of allies set off on a dangerous journey to the Infinite Gorge. Along the way, they would face ancient creatures, traps, and secrets buried for millennia. Meanwhile, Auren stayed behind to guard Malgrath's seal, but he could feel the stirrings of a new shadow rising in the distance. Chapter 118. The Journey to Find the Divine Origin Stone. At the gates of the central temple, the atmosphere grew heavy as the gods prepared to part ways. Auren, holding the eternal torch, cast a hopeful gaze toward Nyxara.
You represent our light on this journey. Find the divine origin stone and bring it back here, Auren said.
Nyxara nodded, her eyes shining with determination.
I will not let this world endure any more darkness.
Nyxara's group included Nyxara, Thalios, Sylara, and several other gods. They left the central temple, heading toward the abyssal ravine, a place shrouded in mystery and danger. Along the way, the gods encountered challenges from both nature and lingering darkness. The black light storms. A strange storm arose, twisting light into blackness, obscuring their vision and weakening their powers. Thalios used the power of the sea to create a protective water barrier around the group. The River of Forgotten Memories. They came upon a sinister river that distorted their memories, sowing doubt within their minds. Now, Nyxara, using her shadow powers, crafted a bridge from her black feathers, guiding the group safely across. Upon reaching the abyssal ravine, the group was awestruck by its daunting landscape. Towering mountains surrounded a bottomless chasm where no light could reach. Ancient whispers from unseen entities echoed, creating an oppressive atmosphere.
We must tread carefully, Nyxara said, her wings quivering with tension.
This is no place for the faint-hearted. Ghosts of the past. Each member of the group faced visions of their past fears and failures. For Nyxara, it was the image of herself as weak and defeated, mocked by others. She overcame it by trusting in her comrades. Ancient creatures. A massive monster, formed from fragments of shadow, attacked the group. Sylara summoned trees from the ground, creating a living forest to restrain the beast, while Thalios and Nyxara combined their powers to destroy it. As the group reached the center of the abyssal ravine, where faint light emanated from a massive stone, Elandra appeared unexpectedly. Dressed in radiant white robes and holding the staff of light, she approached with confidence. I couldn't let you face this alone, she said, her gaze resolute. Elandra's return brought renewed hope to the group. With her help, they navigated the remaining traps and drew closer to the divine origin stone. At the heart of the abyssal ravine, a mysterious figure appeared. An elderly woman with long silver hair and star-like eyes introduced herself as the final guardian of the divine origin stone.
This stone holds power beyond comprehension.
Are you prepared to sacrifice everything to wield it? She asked, her gaze fixed on Nyxara. Stepping forward, Nyxara answered firmly.
If that is the price to protect this world, I am ready.
When Nyxara touched the divine origin stone, a brilliant light erupted, but a dark aura immediately engulfed her body. The curse of the stone began to take hold, causing unbearable pain as if every cell in her body was being torn apart. This is the price of power, the guardian said. Only those with an unyielding will can overcome it. The gods tried to aid Nyxara, but the curse could only be defeated if she fought it from within. Elandra, Sylara, and Nyxara stood around Nyxara, forming a circle of light and shadow to support her battle against the curse. Elandra placed her hand on Nyxara's shoulder, her voice filled with emotion. You don't have to face this alone. We're here for you. Thalios summoned the power of the sea, merging it with the light and shadow, creating an energy stream that eased Nyxara's pain. Eventually, Nyxara held onto the divine origin stone, though the curse continued to linger. The group decided to return to the central temple, where they would seek a way to break the curse and harness the stone's power to stabilize Malgrath's seal. However, deep within his prison, Malgrath sensed the disturbance and began manipulating the curse, seeking a way to return. Chapter 1:19 The Curse of the Primordial Stone. Nyxara stood in the grand hall of the central temple, the faint glow of the primordial stone in her hand radiating both brilliant and dark energy. The power seeped into her body like sharp thorns piercing her flesh. "I'm fine," Nyxara tried to say, but her trembling voice betrayed the strong will she held within. She felt an invisible flame burning, not on her skin but deep within her soul, as if the primordial stone was testing her resolve. Nyxara rushed to her side, her hands glowing with a deep purple light, forming a protective shield around Nyxara. "No! The curse is attacking you! Don't endure this alone!" Dark tendrils from the stone spread, making the air feel frozen. Thalios summoned purifying water and splashed it over Nyxara to ease the curse's pressure, but the water evaporated instantly, leaving a dense mist behind. Solara placed her hand on the ground, summoning blooming vines to encase Nyxara in a soft protective layer.
"The primordial stone is too powerful.
It's testing her trust and willpower." Nyxara shut her eyes tightly, battling the pain. In her mind, images of Ignis and her comrades began to surface. "His flame never went out," she whispered, encouraging herself to endure. From within his seal, Malgrath sensed the unrest emanating from the primordial stone. Using the remnants of his power, he conjured a shadow parasite that infiltrated the stone and then Nyxara's mind. "Do you really believe they trust you, Nyxara?" Malgrath's voice echoed, dark and insidious. "They're only using you to safeguard the stone. Once you're no longer useful, they'll abandon you."
Illusions appeared before her.
Auren turning his back, Solara bowing her head, and even Nyxara, her constant protector, holding a dagger against her. Nyxara's eyes shot open, filled with alarm. No, they wouldn't," Malgrath's voice persisted, sowing deeper seeds of doubt. "But how can you be sure? The truth is, no one can be completely trusted." Nyxara sprang to her feet, her eyes blazing with anger. "Auren, you knew this would happen! You've known all along, haven't you?" she shouted, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. Auren, steady and calm with the eternal torch in hand, stepped forward. "Nyxara, you're being manipulated. Don't let his darkness consume you."
But Nyxara wouldn't listen.
She surged forward, her wings erupting in light and wind, pushing everyone back.
Auren raised the eternal torch high, emitting a warm light that countered Nyxara's explosive power.
"Trust us, Nyxara. We will never abandon you." Nyxara quickly chanted a spell, creating a circle of violet light around Nyxara.
"You are stronger than this, Nyxara. Remember why you accepted this curse."
Solara, her hands bleeding from overusing her power, rose and placed her palms on the ground. She summoned sturdy roots to stabilize the chaotic energy in the room. "We need her to calm down before Malgrath's darkness takes full control of the stone." Solian approached with the eternal hourglass, slowing time in the area to ease the chaos. He placed a gentle hand on Nyxara's shoulder, his gaze kind. "Time is not your enemy, Nyxara. It's always been your ally." Gradually, Malgrath's voice weakened as the group combined their light and dark powers to bring balance to Nyxara. Despite their efforts, Malgrath wasn't finished. From within his seal, he summoned a massive shadow entity in his own image, shattering part of the barrier to launch an attack on the central temple. Thalios summoned a colossal wave, forcing the shadow back, while Ignis's essence, through the eternal torch, illuminated the entire chamber. Solara created thorned vines to entangle the shadow, weakening its strength. Nyxara, holding the primordial stone tightly, stepped forward.
"We need to end this, right now."
She channeled the stone's full energy, merging light and darkness to form a colossal arrow. With unwavering determination, she released it, piercing through the shadow and forcing Malgrath back into his seal. As the battle ended, Nyxara collapsed to her knees, exhausted yet her eyes still shining brightly. "We did it," she said, her voice trembling. Auren helped her to her feet, saying, "You are the light and darkness of this world, Nyxara. Your sacrifice will never be in vain." The deities looked at one another, knowing that this battle was only the beginning of the trials to come.
"The seal is stable for now, but we can't grow complacent," Solian said. The primordial stone must be fully unified to ensure the darkness never returns.
Then let's finish this, Zephyra said, her eyes gleaming with fierce determination. Once and for all, welcome to Fantasy Realms. Enjoy the story, and thank you for your support. Chapter 120. The Dawn of a New Era. The gods gathered at the heart of the central temple, where Malgrath's seal radiated chaotic energy. The primordial stone was placed at the center of the ritual circle, its glow merging with the light of the eternal torch in Auren's hands. Solian, holding the eternal hourglass, stepped forward and began to chant an ancient incantation, his voice deep and resolute. Darkness can never be completely destroyed, but the light of faith will keep it contained. Zephyra, still weak from the curse, stood beside Solian, her eyes blazing with determination. This is our collective responsibility, not just light, but also darkness. Let them coexist to protect this world.
As the ritual commenced, the primordial stone emitted a brilliant light, testing the resolve of those present. Away. Auren, Nyxara, Solara, and Thalios positioned themselves at the four corners of the circle, channeling their powers to stabilize the energy. Finally, a resounding explosion echoed, and the light from the primordial stone enveloped the temple. The seal stabilized, forming an impenetrable barrier to contain any darkness within. When the ritual concluded, the gods stood silently, watching the light from the seal spread across the temple. Thalios spoke in his deep, soothing voice. At last, the darkness is sealed, but we must always remain vigilant. News of the victory spread across the world. People who had fought alongside the gods gathered at the central temple to honor them. Representatives from various races, from brave warriors to wise mages, knelt before the gods, their voices rising in a hymn of hope. You are the guiding light, the ones who have brought peace to this world, King Caius declared, bowing deeply before Auren. At the final gathering of the gods, they unanimously voted for Auren to lead the newly established Divine Council. Standing at the center of the circle, the eternal torch in hand, Auren addressed them. I do not take this position for power, he said, his voice warm yet resolute, but out of responsibility. This council will symbolize the unity between gods and humanity. Zephyra smiled, her wings fluttering softly. You are the best choice, Auren. We trust you. After the ceremony, Zephyra quietly departed from the central temple. She chose a life of solitude, settling in a remote forest where she could protect the world away from the spotlight. I don't need recognition, she told Solara before leaving. True light doesn't need to be seen. It only needs to exist. In her secluded sanctuary, Zephyra became a silent guardian, fending off threats from the darkness without anyone knowing. With her natural powers, Solara decided to sow divine seeds in a desolate land once claimed by darkness. From these seeds, a sacred forest began to grow, becoming a haven for both gods and humanity. Here, light and darkness will coexist in harmony, Solara said, her eyes shining with hope. The gods gathered one last time atop the highest mountain, where the first rays of dawn illuminated the world. Auren, holding the eternal torch, gazed down at the vast expanse below. A new era has begun, he said. This is not the end, but a beginning. The sun rose, its light spreading across the land as a symbol of hope and peace. Birds sang joyfully, their melodies echoing through the air, and the world seemed to embrace the rhythm of a new day.